Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. How do we sound? Good? Okay. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Pahima Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Goda Hari Goda Hari Jaya Goda Hari Nitai Gauranga Goda Hari Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda 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 Jaya Jaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane Om Apavitra Pavitrova Sarva Avastangato Piva Yat Smaret Pundarika Aksham Sabhahya Abhyantara Suchihi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamahang Vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat Kripa Tamahang Vande Parama Ananda Madhavam Trinadapi Sunichena Tarat Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Eva Kevalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, 2 weeks ago, we started a new section, and it was entitled or described as the sacrifice performed at Kurukshetra. The residents of Dwaraka and the residents of Vrindavan both converged at the Kurukshetra. It was a pilgrimage site, and there is a famous lake known as the lakes that Parashuram created when he killed the Kshatriyas 21 times, soaking the earth with the blood of those fallen Kshatriyas. And he created 5 lakes, Samanta Panchaka. So it was the occasion of a solar eclipse. And it just so happened that the residents of Vrindavan also converged at that place at the same time. So there was finally, after many, many, many years, a reunion, because the residents of Vrindavan and the Yadu dynasty are connected. There are familial dealings. Then we heard last week how Kunti Devi accused her brother of Vasudeva of neglecting her. But Vasudeva explained that what he could do, for so many years he was imprisoned by Kamsa. So he said, you can't find any fault with me. I wasn't able to assist you. Then we also heard the glorious position of Ugrasena. So Ugrasena is technically the king of Dwaraka, and Krishna is the prince, the lovable prince. But technically Ugrasena was king, and that was confirmed by Krishna after he killed Kamsa, Ugrasena's evil son. And so when Kamsa was killed, Krishna said, Ugrasena, you are now king of the Yadus. This section today, this first section, is entitled The Glorious Position of Nanda and Yashoda. When they heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, the residents of Vrindavan, headed by Maharaj Nanda, had also decided to go there. And therefore, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were attending. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherder men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on pulak carts. And all of the residents of Vrindavan had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Balaram and Krishna. When the cowherder men of Vrindavan arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty became most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, the Yadu dynasty members stood up to welcome them. And it appeared that the members of the Yadu dynasty and the residents of Vrindavan had regained their lives. Both had been very eager to meet, and so when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, he jumped and ran over to him, embracing him very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, and how immediately after Krishna's birth, Vasudeva had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Yashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yashoda, and then offered respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. After a long separation, a respectful child should first offer obeisances to the parents. Nanda and Yashoda gave their two sons no opportunity for this, however, for as soon as Nanda and Yashoda saw Krishna and Balaram, Nanda and Yashoda embraced them. Only then could Krishna and Balaram offer proper respects. The great Acharya, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, explains that after the initial embraces and obeisances, Vasudeva led Nanda and Yashoda into his tent as they held the hands of Krishna and Balaram. Following them inside were Rohini, other women and men of Vraja, and a number of attendants. Inside, Nanda and Yashoda took the two boys on their laps. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, both Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, both King Nanda and Queen Yashoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. But now, after meeting Krishna and Balaram and embracing them, all their sufferings became mitigated. Despite having heard the glories of the two lords of Dwaraka, and despite seeing these opulences now before their eyes, Nanda and Yashoda looked upon Krishna and Balaram as if they were still their 8-year-old children. At this time now, Vasudeva invited Nanda outside to meet Ugrasena and the other elder Yadus. Taking this opportunity, Rohini and Devaki talked with Queen Yashoda. Krishna's mother Devaki and Balaram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yashoda. Then they spoke. "Dear Queen Yashoda Devi, both you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us. And when we remember you, immediately we are overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. Indeed, we are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, still it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior towards us. When both Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them just as birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. So actually, Krishna and Balaram are not our sons. No, they belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and yourself are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balaram. For as long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. The most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. It is a fact that the most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others. And there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you, Yashoda Devi. Now, the great Vaishnava Acharya, Vishwanath Chakravarti, will give us some insights into this section. Vishwanath describes what Devaki thought before speaking. Alas, because for so long these two sons of mine had you, Yashoda, as their guardian and mother, and because they were immersed in such a vast ocean of ecstatic loving dealings with you, now that you are once more before them, they are too distracted to even notice me, their so-called real mother. Also, you are behaving as if insane and blind with love for them, showing millions of times more maternal affection than I can possess. Thus, you simply keep staring at us, your friends, even without recognizing us. So let me bring you back to reality on the pretext of some affectionate words. Then, when Devaki still failed to get any response from Yashoda, after addressing her, Rohini spoke. Oh, my dear Devaki, it's impossible just now to rouse Yashoda out of this ecstatic trance. We are crying in the wilderness, and Yashoda's two sons are no less bound up in the ropes of affection for her than she is for them. So, let us now go outside to meet with Pritha, Draupadi, and the others. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This section is a very, very important section out of all the chapters of this 10th canto. This section is possibly one of the top 10 sections, so you want to listen very, very carefully. This section is entitled, Krishna Instructs the Gopis on the Highest Philosophy of Life. Now, as far as the gopis of Vrindavan were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, the gopis did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were indeed their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not even tolerate not seeing him momentarily when their eyelids blinked and thus impeded their vision. Indeed, the gopis had condemned Lord Brahma, the creator of the body, because Brahmaji foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked the gopis seeing Krishna uninterrupted. Because the gopis had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy in seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how anxious the gopis were to see Krishna once again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, the gopis took Krishna inside their hearts through their eyes and embraced Krishna to their full satisfaction. Even though the gopis were embracing Krishna only mentally, the gopis became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being, the gopis completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance which the gopis achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis who are constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him within their minds. And therefore, since Krishna is present in everyone's heart, Krishna also reciprocated their embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking with each other, Krishna took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as Krishna approached the gopis, he began smiling. And after actually embracing the gopis and inquiring about their welfare, Krishna began to encourage the gopis. He spoke as follows: "My dear friends, you know that both Lord Balaram and myself left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies, and so obliged we became, and we forgot you. We were so much, you who are so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand this by this action, that I have become ungrateful to you. But still I know you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously? After all, you must know it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who, after all, is the supreme controller and does as he desires. Providence causes the intermingling of different friends and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that due to the presence of clouds and strong wind, atomic particles of dust and broken pieces of cotton are intermingled together. And after the strong wind subsides, all the particles of dust and cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects which we see are different manifestations of the Supreme Lord's energy. By His supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on the will of the Supreme. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. So that statement here, right here, that is very significant. I'm going to repeat that. This statement is very significant. Fortunately, you gopis have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotional affection for me, at the end, certainly goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation. My dear gopis, you may learn from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. The earthen pot is nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always of the same physical composites, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of the cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a combination of my different energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 material elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his or her false conception of oneself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of one's imprisonment in material existence. So these last 2 lines are very, very conclusive. Here is the real facts of life. I will repeat. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his or her false conception of the self as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his or her imprisonment in material existence. So as the Supreme Absolute Truth, I am transcendental to both the living entity as well as to the living entity's material embodiment. The 2 energies, material and spiritual, are both acting under my supreme control. And so, my dear gopis, I request that instead of being so afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. Now, Prabhupada gives an explanation, a purport to these very important instructions that Krishna has just given the gopis. Prabhupada writes, this important instruction of Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. This is described by Lord Chaitanya as Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says in the 9th chapter that he is present everywhere in his impersonal feature. Everything is existing in him, but still he himself is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy. And because the energy is non-different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. Krishna is the energetic from which all the energies issue forth. Now, when this absolute consciousness or Krishna consciousness is absent, then we are separated from Krishna. That is the state of Maya. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of bhakti, or the process of devotional service, is the revival of Krishna consciousness. I have to stop right there. Notice Prabhupada uses the word revival. This is so important in understanding this philosophy that Prabhupada is teaching us. If something is being revived, it means something was existing, was at the verge of death, and became revived. So, what is Prabhupada saying? Krishna consciousness, love of Krishna, is always there. The living entity is eternally the servant of Krishna. But when we give up devotional service, when we try to become the enjoyer of this material world, then we enter the state of forgetfulness, Maya. But when you come in contact with the Guru or the devotee, then your devotional service is revived. This is so important. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separated from Krishna, then one can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of Lord Krishna. So, I will comment now because this is so important. Hold on a second. So, there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and when Prabhupada translates the verse and gives the synonyms, he says that the living entity has two choices. That is, to exploit or utilize the resources of the material energy. So when the living entity exploits Krishna's material energy, that is called sense gratification. That is called Maya. But when the living entity utilizes the material energy to serve Krishna, that is called Krishna consciousness. Technically, it is called Yukta Vairagya. Prabhupada continues, but in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts him or herself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his or her material existence. And this is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, one falsely thinks that he or she is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer. But if the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa Vigraha, or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple, is exactly the same Sachit Ananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then one's service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, I might add in this connection, you especially Shrilesh, and all those who support you in your Ratha Yatra. That Ratha Yatra is Archa Vigraha, the deity form of Krishna. And look what it said. Then one's service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, when you do Ratha Yatra, you are doing direct service to Krishna. Please, take that deep into your heart. May you never lose sight of it. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One simply has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible even in this material existence. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of achintya beda abeda tattva, or simultaneous oneness indifference, the gopis remained always in Krishna consciousness and became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity, who falsely presents him or herself as the enjoyer of the material world, is called Jiva Kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows the instructions of Krishna becomes immediately freed from the Jiva Kosha imprisonment. As it is, a person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. Why is that? It is because he or she utilizes everything for Krishna's service, and by doing so is not at any time separated from Krishna. So as you can see, this section is the actual conclusion of the Krishna consciousness philosophy. This section that we just heard is the same thing that's concluded in Bhagavad Gita. The gopis, however, prayed to Krishna as follows. So this is after they heard Krishna speak this Achintya Veda philosophy. Now the gopis respond. Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahmaji, the creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery, even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. The conditioned soul, fallen into the dark well of this material existence, can very easily, however, take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then one's deliverance is guaranteed. Oh, dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. Therefore, we request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun, and that will be your greatest benediction. Prabhupada now sums it up. Prabhupada says, the gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. The gopis only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavan. In spite of their long separation, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in any idea of going with Krishna to his capital city, Dwaraka. No. Instead, the gopis wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. The gopis immediately invited Krishna to come back with them to Vrindavan. Now, all of you there, Shrilesh and all of the Rath Yatra team, listen to this next statement by Prabhupada. It directly pertains to you. I see you, Shrilesh, with the Jagannath cart behind you. So this instruction is for you and all your Rath Yatra junta. The transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Rath Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. So I'm now going to rephrase that to make it personal. The Rath Yatra festival observed by the devotees of Cologne and Panama is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwaraka in order to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence. But Radharani wanted to enjoy Krishna's company only in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, actually never goes away from Vrindavan. And the gopis and other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. So since this particular section is so important, I've included some pertinent notes from the Bhagavatam. So here is some more details. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, just then Lord Balaram saw the gopis standing a short distance away. Seeing the gopis trembling with eagerness to meet Krishna, and apparently ready to give up even their lives if they could not meet Krishna, Balaram tactfully decided to get up and involve himself elsewhere. Then the gopis attained the state described in this episode. In referring to the gopis' intolerant disrespect of Lord Brahma, the creator of eyelids, Shukadeva Goswami is giving vent to his own subtle jealousy of the gopis' favored position. Srila Jiva Goswami offers an alternate understanding of the phrase Nitya Yujam, which may mean even of the Lord's principal queens who tend to be proud of their constant association with Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that Krishna expanded himself by his Vibhuti Shakti in order to embrace each of the gopis individually, thus awaking each of them from her trance. Krishna thus inquired, "So, are you now relieved of your pain of separation?" Then Krishna laughed in order to help lighten the spirits of the gopis. Meanwhile, the gopis were thinking, No, Krishna, we are not like you. You, with your heart shattered by remembering us day and night, have given up all sense enjoyment in your distress of separation. Rather, we have not remembered you at all. In fact, we have been quite happy without you. In response, Krishna here asks whether the gopis resent his ingratitude. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the gopis then replied, "But that Supreme Lord you are blaming is none other than yourself, O most clever of speakers. Everyone in the world knows this. Why should we be ignorant of this fact?" Then Lord Krishna told the gopis, "All right, if this is true, that I must be God, still I am conquered by your loving affection." According to Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti, Krishna implies the following idea in this section. If you gopis know that I am the Supreme Lord, there should be no question of your suffering any separation from me, since I pervade all existence, since one of my names is Vasudeva or Vishnu. So your unhappiness must be due to a lack of discrimination. Therefore, please take this instruction from me, which will remove your ignorance. But the truth of the matter is that you gopis were, in your previous lives, great masters of yoga, and thus you must already know this science of Jnana Yoga. Furthermore, whether I try to teach this to you in person or through my representative such as Uddhava, still it will not produce the desired result. Jnana Yoga simply causes suffering for those who are fully immersed in pure love of Godhead. So one should properly understand the relationships among the material objects of this world, the elements comprising their basic substance, the individual spirit souls, and the one Supreme Soul. The various objects of material enjoyment, such as pots, rivers, and mountains, are manufactured from the basic material elements, earth, water, fire, and so on. These elements pervade material things as their cause, while the spirit souls pervade them in their special role as their enjoyer, swatmana. and ultimately the material elements, their products, and the living entities are all manifest within and pervaded by the imperishable, perfectly complete Supreme Soul, Krishna. A jnani with realization of these facts should feel no separation from Krishna in any situation. But the gopis of Vraja are much more elevated in their Krishna consciousness than ordinary jnanis. Because of the gopis' intense love for Krishna in his most human-like, all-attractive aspect as a young cowherder boy, Krishna's internal potency, Yoga Maya, covered the knowledge of Krishna's majestic opulences from the gopis, including Krishna's all-pervasiveness. Thus, the gopis were able to relish the intense ecstasy caused by their love in separation from Krishna. So it was only in jest that Sri Krishna ascribed to the gopis any lack of spiritual discrimination, revealing the jealous mood in which the gopis spoke these deceived, reverential words. Vishwanath Chakravarti reveals their statements as follows. O Supreme Lord, O directly manifest Supersoul, O crest jewel of instructors in definitive knowledge, you were aware of our excessive attachment to home, property, and family. Therefore, previously, you had Uddhava instruct us in that knowledge which dispels ignorance. And now you have done the same thing yourself. In this way, you have purified our hearts of contamination. And as a result, we understand your pure love for us, free from any motivation other than assuring our liberation. But we are only unintelligent cowherder women. So how can this knowledge remain fixed in our hearts? We cannot even meditate steadily on your feet, the focus of realization for great souls like Brahmaji. So, Krishna, please be merciful to us and somehow make it possible for us to concentrate on you even a little bit. We are still suffering the reactions of our own fruitive work. So how can we meditate on you, the goal of the great yogis? Such yogis are immeasurably wise, whereas we are but feeble-minded women. Please do something to get us out of this deep well of material life. Thus, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the words the gopis speak in this section may be interpreted as follows. O sun, who directly destroys the darkness of ignorance, we gopis are scorched by the sun rays of this philosophical knowledge. We are like chakora birds who can subsist only on the moonlight radiating from Krishna's beautiful face. Please come back to Vrindavan with us, and in this way bring us back to life. And now, if Krishna were to reply, okay, then come to Dwarka, there we will enjoy together, the gopis would then reply that Sri Vrindavan is their home, and they are too attached to it for them to take up residence anywhere else. Only there in Vrindavan, the gopis imply, can Krishna attract them by wearing peacock feathers in his turban and playing enchanting music with his flute. Only by Krishna's appearing once again in Vrindavan can the gopis be saved, not by any other kind of meditation on Krishna or theoretical knowledge of the self. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namaste Narasimhaya, Praklada Klada Dayane, Hiranya Kashi Purvaksha, Shilatangana Kalaye, Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsinho, Yato Yamitato Nrsinha, Bahir Nrsinga Hridaye Nrsinho, Nrsingham Ading Sharanang Prapadye, Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Keshavadrita Nrsinga Rupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat